Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. He is WSU President Kirk Schulz, and he's my pal. You're my pal, right?
I am.
Okay, good. And I'm Enrique, Cerna, WSU Regent, and also recovering broadcast journalist and a Coug graduate, class of 1975. And we're very pleased to be here to have a chat over the next hour about all things Cougs. But before we get to the meat and potatoes of all the issues and things, let's talk about that football game that happened last Saturday in Wisconsin, and the fact that we went in there in a hostile environment and we defeated I think they were number 18 in the country.
Yep.
That had to be, you were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
I was there with Noel. Chancellor Elizabeth Chilton was there with her husband, Michael. And it was just a great feeling to be on the field after the game and watch the crowds after the game too, because they don't lose at Camp Randall very often. And so a lot of people just kind of stunned and didn't know quite what to feel. But afterwards, the Wisconsin folks are really hospitable. We saw a lot of places, let's just say people having adult beverages, and there was Badgers and Cougs all sitting there kind of enjoying each other's company. But we were the fourth most watched game on national television last week. We played Wisconsin. So it was an awesome win. It was also great for the university with that national exposure that we got.
The thing that I noticed in watching it, I was in San Diego at the time, and I saw a lot of Cougs in the stands. I mean, we did similar colors and stuff like that. But no, the Cougs were there. And that was very impressive to me.
I talked to Pat John, our athletic director, after the game. He said he thought it was the largest away crowd that he had seen in his time as athletic director here from WSU. So, but when I got here, Enrique, people would talk about, oh, I went to Auburn, I went to Notre Dame when the Cougs played there. This was the first time in 7 football seasons that I've been here that we played a Power 5 opponent in the sort of 3-game pre-Pac-12 season. And you can see why. And just wait, Wisconsin gets to come to Pullman in next year.
Oh, really?
I think it's next year, the year after, and that's going to be pretty exciting.
It'll be interesting to see how well they travel, and we're going to get a lot of Wisconsin. I would imagine we would.
I think
so. There's actually a lot of Wisconsin people that live in Washington State, so I can see they're making the way. Well, we want to just send great praise to the coach, Jake Dickert, and also to the team for just showing up really well. And I think what's important now is that people need to come to our games, because we have 6 home games now as we talk.
We do. We play Colorado State this weekend, and then Oregon after that. And it's an exciting group of young men to watch. It's going to be a great environment, and the weather's going to be good. And don't decide to come in November, right? All of a sudden the weather's not so good.
Yeah, I've been here for a few of those.
September games, it's still really pretty nice on the Palouse. So we hope to have a full house for both those games. Yeah,
and we're going to talk more about sports, particularly Pac-12 and NIL, those types of things as we have our conversation here. We want to a couple of housekeeping things. We want to note that this conversation was sponsored by WSU Impact, WSU Alumni Association, also the WSU Foundation. We also want to acknowledge that Washington State University acknowledges that its locations statewide are on the homelands of Native peoples who have lived in this region from time immemorial. And the university expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude towards these original and current caretakers of the region. So we are in the beginning of the academic year. It's already a busy year.
It's a busy year.
Talk a bit about the atmosphere. So last year, after COVID, having students come back to campus, do you feel like things are getting back to normal?
It feels much more normal than it did in previous years. And you say, well, how do you measure that, right? So when I was walking through different campus locations the first week of class, I was down in the Tri-Cities, for example, and you'd walk through buildings and you'd find all the soft furniture and places like that. Students were sitting there, they were talking to each other on their laptops. And kind of during the COVID time, a lot of people would come into class, they do their thing, and they turn around and they would leave. And so just the overall attitude of our faculty, of our staff, our students has really been buoyant. I think people took some time off this summer and kind of got a little bit refurbished and refreshed and that helps a lot. But no, it's just you feel that energy and that excitement that we haven't felt for a couple of years. And
Yeah, and I think people are really just want to get back to normal as best we can, but knowing that we also have issues that we have public health issues now. So where are we with that as far as making sure that we're providing good health care for the students and still aware of the fact that we're dealing with the pandemic is not over.
Yeah, our new vice chancellor for student affairs for the WSU Pullman campus is Ellen Taylor, who's got a specialty. Her background really is around psychology, student wellness, and things like that. And so I think this is a national conversation. If I talk to other presidents, student well-being, student mental well-being, faculty and staff mental well-being are something that I believe was there pre-pandemic. It was an issue. It's just with the pandemic that it's really shined a light on it. So we're doing everything we can, using some electronic tools, using people to try and do everything we can to support our students when they're back. And that includes all the still uncertainty of, boosters and what should I do and where do I get good public health information. And a quick anecdote, when my youngest son went to Oklahoma State, many years ago, and he started off in one major, and then after 3 days he switched to another major. And my wife and I are both higher education. We said, well, Andrew, why'd you do that? He said, oh, well, one of my buddies said that this would be better. I give that story because we all think sometimes, well, people are going to go look at a website, they're going to do all this. They're going to talk to their peers as well. And so there's still a lot of education we need to continue to do internally about the values of vaccines and just keeping safe. And if you're not feeling well, stay home. Don't go to class. Don't go into a crowded environment. If you want a mask and you feel wearing a mask is going to make a difference on how you feel and the safety that you have, wear a mask. And I think those are the kind of things that we have to keep communicating.
Yeah, the days of when I was in college back in the Stone Age here, you have a cold, you'd still go and do things. Well, you can't really do that anymore because the potential impact and knowing, okay, are you take a test? What do you need to do? So it really is a different way of thinking as to what we need to be aware of here going ahead here.
It is for faculty and staff though too.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sort of that generation. I feel like I'm getting close to that dinosaur status as well, where if you could sort of get
I'm an older dinosaur.
I know, yeah. But if you could get up and move, right? You were like, I'm going to go into work. I'm going to power through it. That's the way to do it. And we've tried to just tell all of our employees across our campuses, man, if you're not feeling well, it's actually better for you to be at home. Or be, don't come and bring whatever you got into the workplace. So I think we actually have some habits that were good habits that happened during COVID, and we need to make sure we don't kind of regress back to maybe some of the things we did.
Yeah, things are fluid, so we need to be aware of all of that. Let's talk about the legislature and the past year. How well did we do in the legislature? It was a short session last year.
Well, most short sessions, there may be a little opportunity for a little bit of resource or something that maybe during the full session didn't get funded all the way, and you go back and you start to see if you can get a little bit of extra money added to it. But this year in short session, there were several major initiatives that kind of went through. For WSU, clearly our number one thing we want to talk about in the short session was salaries, because our faculty and staff are like, everybody, they're feeling the effects of inflation. And so we were able to secure some really needed state dollars to make sure that we could actually do across the board raises for all of our faculty, staff, and graduate students. But we also got some programmatic funding for some things that we weren't sure that we might get. One of those was cybersecurity. I'm just like everybody else, right? You can't get these constant email notes.
Exactly.
This company has said their stuff compromised and all that. So that cybersecurity there is no business that doesn't need to be thinking about that. So we want to be making sure we're putting out graduates in the state of Washington that are prepared to work with area businesses all through the state, not just in the Seattle tech corridor, but all across the state. So we got some resources to hire some faculty, set up some cybersecurity degree programs at really 3 campuses: Pullman, Tri-Cities, and Everett. And then a lot of people know out there, Cougs especially, that when we were working through the legislature to get the medical school funded, a little bit of conflict, let's just say, between us and our sister institution.
A little east-west.
Yeah, just a little bit. And for the first time in many, many years this year, we actually had a joint proposal between University of Washington and Washington State University through our pharmacy schools to seek funding for a one-year residency for folks that are really working with these kind of complex pharmaceutical issues around really severe mental health. And I can tell you, not a single legislator, both sides of the aisle, they love the fact that the two leading research universities are bringing forward a proposal to be funded in the healthcare space together. So we've come a long ways.
Yeah, little progress there in these steps. So that's very important. So looking ahead here, as we plan for the coming session that's going to happen, what are our priorities there? What's the most important thing that you want, hoping that might happen?
Well, just like it was during the short session, believe it or not, salaries are
yes.
going to be a major issue for us as well. And so I think they are across the state. So this is not a message that's different than our elected officials are hearing from, all different sectors of public sector employees. So we're seeking a 3% pool each year for the next 2 years. And largely the way this practically happens in the state is, whatever state employees get, it's about the same across the state. So there's lots of different factions and involvement of labor unions and organized labor working with the governor and the legislature. So that's number one. We've got nursing accreditation. We have the oldest nursing school, the largest nursing school in the state of Washington. A lot of people don't realize that. They think it's somebody else. But our nursing salaries until this year were at 25% of where they need to be in terms of national norms and peers. We were able to bump that up to 50 percentile, but for accreditation purposes, we need to make sure that we're actually paying our nursing faculty an appropriate salary. And you say, well, Kirk, you mentioned salaries before. This is a special case for us, is really focusing around nursing. Then one of the other things that we've got is around the whole area of the mental health in the state. And we've got really two proposals that we want to bring forward. One is to initiate a social work program. We actually don't have social work at WSU. When we've got all this other healthcare space stuff, we think we have some really unique things that we can bring to the table. And that would be a baccalaureate degree and a master's degree in social work. And then finally, we've all seen in the pandemic, public health. Most of us probably couldn't have talked about who our public health officer was 3 years ago. We need more professionals in that, sort of public and community health space. So we're also asking the legislature to support us in that area. So, and then finally, if I, since I'm on a roll, don't stop me. The other thing is we are bringing forward a proposal for a brand new state-of-the-art engineering facility on the Pullman campus. And you say, well, Kirk, you guys bring forward stuff all the time. The difference here is we've raised nearly $40 million in private funds already for the building. So we go to the legislature, you say, hey, need this amount. We need 80 million total to fund it. Guess what? We've already got this money sitting in the bank. The commitments are there. And I think that just represents, if you're an elected official, that means your dollars get to go further because we've done a really nice job doing that. So we've already talked to a lot of folks in the legislature, a lot of positive. People love the fact that we've gone out, got some private sector dollars. And so it's an aggressive agenda. We got a lot of things on there, but the adage is, what the answer is if you don't ask. And so we need to ask for what we need, what our students need to be successful. And that's our package this year.
Okay, so what about students as far as legislative needs and for grant money and things like that? Are we walking in and asking help for them there, or what are we doing?
Largely what we do is we focus around new degree programs and things like that. The state of Washington has one of the most generous financial aid packages, if you will, through the state need grant and lots of these other things. And so our goal with many students is to help them fill out FAFSA forms and making sure that they're eligible for a lot of these aid. And I just want to make it clear, Enrique, these are not loans. They're actually grants that the state provides to families that are based on income and all kinds of other things. And I'm constantly asked around the state, around the nation, people go, how'd you guys do that in Washington? And I talk about really our educational climate. So we do give out a lot of scholarship support, but we do it in partnership with other folks, other organizations, the state of Washington, our own scholarship fund. So our job is to help every family that wants to come to Washington State University, any of our campuses, to put together a package that works for them and their family. So it's almost a customized one-on-one type of experience.
Because we a large number of students here, what's it, 70-75%. They need some type of financial aid to be able to attend this school.
Yeah, and that's part of our heritage as a land grant university.
Right.
Is we're meeting the needs of the state of Washington, and I think it's really important to meet the needs of Washingtonians who want a Cougar experience, and so that's a big part of what we do.
Right. In these, as we plan to go to the session, we have a team down there really working on this too, right?
We do.
So, and how involved are you as far as getting down to Olympia and also working with that team to make sure that we're connecting with lawmakers?
Yeah, so it's legislative advocacy is a year-round occupation, and most people in an art, yeah. And most people tend to think, well, you must be in the session all the time. Yeah. And it turns out I'm in the session for limited times. We work year-round, and so what we wind up doing is we do a lot of meetings with elected officials during the summer and the fall, where they're not in a session. We can sit down and maybe have an hour conversation with somebody about higher education, our students' needs, what types of things we're hearing. We talk about our initiatives and what we would like to have funded, but that may be 10 minutes of an hour-long conversation. When you go into Olympia, when there's a session there, they're limited in time. There are huge numbers of groups that want to see all the folks. So you're going to maybe get 10 minutes with a member. And if that's the first time you're talking to a member about what types of things are important to us, we've already kind of lost it. So there's a little bit of mythos out there about, you kind of ride in on a horse in the middle of the session and you make things happen. Sometimes you've got to sit down with people and say, hey, we really need this and here's why. But it's a year-round effort. And then we have a team. We've got certain individuals that work for federal advocacy. We have certain ones that work for statewide advocacy. We've got people that are specialists in the healthcare space and advocacy there. It's all led by our Vice President for Government Relations and External Affairs, Colleen Kirk, who's been here with President Floyd, and then myself. So we've got a really highly experienced group of people, been here a while. And at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And, my first year or two, people didn't know me very well. They were meeting me for the first time. Now I'll step into somebody's office and they're thinking, hey, I've seen this guy for 7 years now, coming and visiting and talk about what we're doing. And you develop that trust relationship back and forth. So when you say, I need something, this is really important to us, it doesn't mean they're going to give it to you, but they have some sense of, hey, we've had this conversation multiple times over the years, and I like what Washington State University's done. So it's sometimes people think you put on a kind of a plaid jacket and you're a used car salesman mode. It's no different than anything else. It's getting to know people.
Yeah, you don't look that good in plaid.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how things have sort of been rearranged here in one WSU. Talk about that, what it is, what's the whole concept, and what are you hoping it will accomplish?
So
it's a big move.
Yeah, and we're people tend to think of Pullman as that's just WSU, and they sometimes, if you go to Vancouver and we talk to somebody who graduated from Vancouver campus, they go, hey, what about us? We've been here 31, 32 years producing graduates. And so as we took a look at it, I like to describe my previous position was I was president of the WSU system and really kind of de facto the president or chancellor of the Pullman campus. And I like to tell people it's like a Swiss Army knife, right? You can do it all, but maybe not do any of it particularly well. And I think it was just time to separate those two out so that I can spend more time building those relationships, raising money, working in each of our different communities. And I don't mean just the geographic communities, but our Latinx communities in the state, communities of color in the Seattle area and in Spokane. And, I'm on the road a lot more. So with the restructuring and appointment of a chancellor that's managing and leading day-to-day activities for our flagship Pullman campus means that I can be out supporting each of our campuses a little better than I was before. It wasn't I wasn't doing it. It's just you say, boy, I got to that campus once a semester. Now I get there 2 or 3 times. And I want each of those campuses to be able to work hard in their geographic area about what do our graduates here need? What does the community need us to do and be for us to be successful? And that's going to look a little different in each of the locations. But at the end of the day, Pullman's still our flagship campus. It's where Pac-12 athletics is. It's where we have our residents and Greek life. That's what people think of as our historic home. It's our largest campus and certainly will be for the next decade. So I think it's not really changing any of those traditions. It's really adding additional leadership to really help us move forward and to make sure Pullman's got its own unique identity, which most people could say, oh yeah, I know exactly what it is. And if you said, Kirk, where's that written down? We go, well, it's not really written down. Everybody kind of talks about it. So this is going to be an opportunity to say, here's what we want WSU Pullman to be and do for the next decade.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, I think every region that we're in, if you look at, Everett to Spokane to the Tri-Cities to Vancouver, they're unique.
Yes.
What they have. So they bring something different to the table, but they also they're part of WSU. And I think, being able to, communicate that is just very important for people to know.
I sort of like to say we're all crimson and gray, but it can be maybe different shades of crimson.
Yeah.
And, the experience, it's interesting if I go talk to one of our graduates from WSU Vancouver, they'll say, I'm a Cougar, I'm part of the Washington State University, but guess what? My real allegiance here is to Vancouver because that's where the faculty were. That's where they gave me my opportunity. And we hear that story time and time again from those different locations. And so all really one WSU is doing is acknowledging that sense of community in those particular areas. And I think it's a work in progress. And I know there's, people have different questions about what does this mean and everything, but hopefully it's seamless. And what people do is go, wow, we can see some achievement that we never saw before. And that's my hope.
Let's talk about WSU Impact, the advocacy efforts, what it is for one thing, and how it is helping statewide.
To effectively work with the legislature, you really need a whole team of not just individuals, but also different organizations that may be affiliated directly with the university. Sometimes they're university employees and have the ability to really help us when we go into the legislature to really be influential. So WSU Impact, what it does is it works with other similar organizations for higher education in the state. University of Washington has a very similar entity, so do most of the other public. So we have this network of these organizations that are there to help promote legislative advocacy. The second thing I think it does is it has the ability to take message points about the entire institution to push it out to an alumni network, to lots of supporters. It may not be alumni of the university, but other people as well. And so to me, it's that combination of getting a network of people involved in the business community and different communities, as well as working in concert with our government relations team, but sometimes a little bit independently and separate from that. And it just allows us to cross that finish line at the end of the legislative session with the resources that we need for our students, faculty, and staff to be successful. Ultimately, that's the bottom line.
Right. And we partner through that effort as well with other entities. Can you talk a bit about that and those partnerships and how they work?
Yeah, we've got some like the College Promise Coalition in the state that also works directly with WSU Impact. And what it is some of these other organizations are not as, they're not worried about just Washington State University. They're worried about community and technical colleges, four-year institutions, those kind of things. And so it's people kind of coming together around a common set of interests and things that are important. And that's really that partnership part. it's also really, I hate to use the term impactful when it's called WSU Impact, but that's really a better.
That's what it is.
It's a really good description.
Right.
So I think when we see this announcement come out at the end of the session, hey, Washington State University got this, these are the kinds of things we were successful with. It's easy to think there's one person involved or two. And I can tell you it's often members of the business community, it's regents, it is our students, it's WSU Impact, it's our professional staff, it's me and the chancellors. It's really a team approach that has to all be coordinated to make it all work. And the key thing is, and you've been there and visited, legislators, it's you got to have a common message, you have to have a common theme, and you got to just really keep that message moving forward from all these different groups in a focused manner.
Let's talk about the Alumni Association. We are here at the Lewis Alumni Center. This is a great place. It's gorgeous for one thing. And all the Cougs, when you come back to campus, come here and just, tour around, because it's great looking, but it also has just that impact that we have as alumni and the importance of it. But the Alumni Association and its importance to the university, and not only just, connecting with those that have gone to school here, but how is it working together with other parts like WSU Impact as well as the foundation?
Yeah, the Alumni Association is that opportunity for somebody when they graduate and move out in the world, and they may not even be in the Pacific Northwest, they could be all over the country. It's their opportunity to stay connected with what's going on. And if you live in the state of Washington, you just read the local paper, you can get some information. But when you move out of state, that Alumni Association is that way to stay connected, learn what's going on, and things like that. The other thing that's important with our Alumni Association is it's an opportunity to get together with fellow alumni and Cougs all over the country. So we talk about football watch parties and these kind of things. You say, well, Kirk, boy, that's not very academic. But, we've got a group in Houston, Texas, Las Vegas, Atlanta, places like that, where these folks will get together. They're different ages. They get a chance. There's a common theme and camaraderie that gets put together. And so we can talk about legislative advocacy, sponsoring of WSU Impact and those things. But I just want to remind people, alumni associations are also to get people together and to make sure that they're having a good time. We went through, under the previous leadership of the Alumni Association, a really massive drive to make sure that we added more members. So we're looking at, I think, 45,000 members nationally. And we're lucky to be associated with an institution that has such institutional pride. Just a quick, anecdotal story. So both my sons happen to lived on the East Coast. So my wife and I are visiting, driving through rural Georgia. We stop in this, it's called Buc-ee's. It's this big gas station type thing. And I'm walking through the store and I'm wearing my Cougar gear like I often do. And I hear "Go Cougs." Now this is the middle of Georgia, right? I "Go Cougs" back. And so I went and got, we were there to just get some, snacks and stuff. So I'm standing in line. This young man comes out from behind a cash register, goes, "You're Kirk, right?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, I work for the Daily Evergreen. And I covered all the stuff that you and the leadership team did around COVID and the COVID response." So here we are in this middle of Georgia because of seeing the symbol and, all these people there that probably support Georgia and stuff are wondering who the heck these people are. But it's a reminder of the power of being touched by Washington State University, and that's really harnessed by the Alumni Association.
I was in Paris, France, and had someone, and I was wearing a WSU cap. "Hey, go Cougs!" And I'm like, "What?" Yeah. So, and that isn't unusual. I think
Everybody's got those stories.
Got those stories.
Yeah.
It's somewhere around the country where you have that connection, and there's a bond there. I think.
Yes.
And I think too that alumni also have the opportunity to inform young people about the different, courses and specialties at this school. I mean, I look at, the communications business in Rural College and people that come from elsewhere in the country because they want to be a part of that legacy. So I think that's just crucial. Mariah Mackey, she was recently announced as the Associate Vice President for Advancement and Executive Director of the Alumni Association. A great addition. Good addition.
Yeah, Mariah's been fantastic. So was here, worked at Washington State University, then spent about 10 years with the Wildcats at the University of Arizona.
Yeah.
With their foundation, with their Alumni Association, we were able to attract her to come back and fill in Tim Pavich's shoes after he had been our Alumni Association director for so many years.
Great.
And so what I love about Mariah is she understands the area, understands the Kook spirit, has some really in-depth experience at a larger institution in a different area that she can bring back. So we were lucky to hire her, and I know Kooks and people out there will have a chance to meet her at different events over the course of the next year. So make sure you come up and say hello.
Let's talk about kind of the state of higher education, particularly after, well, we're still recovering from the pandemic. What's been the impact on enrollment, and are we having to have a real serious look at how that is affecting future enrollment and really the status of higher education?
Yeah, higher education is still recovering from COVID, and that includes enrollment. I saw some national figures recently that they think we have 1.5 million less students in higher education today than we did 2 years ago. And that's a staggering figure if you really think about it. So except for the really elite public universities, almost every public university is down in enrollment. And we're seeing that as well. The community and technical colleges in the state of Washington, some of them are down 15 to 20%. And so, and for a variety of reasons, we talk about this V-shaped economic recovery. Well, it wasn't V-shaped in every community and every household. And so I think as we work to make sure we're back out in the state of Washington, really recruiting hard, that's why the questions we had about financial aid and FAFSA and can families afford to send their sons or daughters or grandsons, granddaughters, guardians here? Those are the kinds of things that we need to keep working on together. So in direct answer, though, we're going to be down in enrollment overall, several percentage points. We'll put some of that out later this week. But there are some positive signs that are in there. So for example, WSU Pullman, we are up in first-year students over where we were a year ago. So even though our total enrollment looks down, we think we've hit the bottom, and we're starting to see that come back up. And remember, we did a whole year of recruiting 2 years ago online. You couldn't do campus tours, you couldn't do those kind of things. So we're just starting to get back to doing those, for the last year, bringing families in, do a campus tour, having the live sessions, those things on campuses across the system in person now. So people get I don't know if you went to one of those when you were a prospective student, but if you go to something like that, you can't wait to get back to campus, right? You go and you sign up for classes and you see what the place looks like. So I think it's going to take us a couple of years to recover. And our enrollment management people told us a year ago, said, don't expect a V-shaped recovery for enrollment. We're going to have to go work it hard. We're going to have to meet our families where they are. We're going to have to put those financial aid packages together. We're not going to just passively be able to sit back and let the applications come in. And so I think we're doing all the right stuff, but it's takes a while to turn that corner.
What do you say to people that kind of question, is there a real need to go to, a university or get a four-year degree, or that takes longer in many cases now, but what do you say to them? Because there seems to be growing questions about that.
Yeah, I've watched in my career, this kind of waxes and wanes and whether or not you need it. I think if you look at most economic data, there is no question that your lifetime earnings with a four-year degree are substantially higher than they would be without a four-year degree. So I think, we tend to look at a specific degree and what that does, but it's, higher ed and Washington State is a broadening experience as well. It's not just you're going to get a great chemical engineering degree or a great communications degree. You're going to have some other things that I think are really important as you build out your life. You're going to have leadership opportunities. You're going to have lifelong friends that you make. You're going to have experiential learning and things like that, where you get to go and spend a summer, for example, working aside a professional in that area. And guess what? When you graduate, then you've got some experience and some practical things. So, but I will say this, though. I think the question is, if I'm graduating from high school, there may be a certain segment of our population that ought to say, you know what, maybe I should go work for a few years instead of going straight into the 4-year degree experience. Or maybe I need to work for a while, take care of my family. And guess what? I'm going to go to local community college for a couple of years and start getting some coursework and figure out what I want to do. I want to be careful that large public research universities don't sort of say, well, if you don't come out of high school and go immediately to college, that's a wrong pathway. We got to acknowledge that the pathways into a university are going to be, there'll be some graduates that come straight out of high school right in. We'll still have a large number of those in Pullman. We'll have some that have gone out, worked for a while, decided, you know what, I want to be a senior manager. I want to be an engineer instead of a technician. I want to do this or that. And I need that degree, credential, and experience and learning to really be able to do that. We'll have some that may return after another career and come back and say, okay, now I'm ready. I always wanted to do this. And then we're going to have some that say, as much as I might love to move to Pullman or Vancouver, I can't do it. And our global campus and the ability to do a complete degree program online at your own pacing is also going to be a really important thing. So we got to be good at all of those. Right. And we got to be welcoming to all those students. They're all part of the Kook family. And I think that's the complexity when talking about enrollment and things moving ahead. Is you used to be able to be really good at one thing and the others are okay. I think now that you got to be good at all of it.
Did COVID have any upsides as far as what we learned? Maybe some things that we can take forward here?
I think we feel there's more demand from students and families. For example, if I'm going to be out for a week on a business trip or whatever, hey, can I grab those lectures or that class online? Can I look at it so I don't feel like I'm missing class if I'm not there? And so I think one of the directions we see people heading out of COVID is a lot of faculty and staff went, hey, some of these tools are really pretty good. And it's not just what we're using here where it's a camera and we see that, but just the interactive and the ways that some of those teaching tools are really useful. And so I think if you would have said, is there any way that 70% of your faculty or 80% of your faculty would think, hey, they would do that? I would say, yeah, probably not. On that pandemic, a lot of people went, okay, now if I'm a faculty member and I got to go somewhere for a week in the semester for a meeting or some particular conference, guess what? I know some of them will say, hey, I'm going to teach from my hotel room, still do class. Now I'm just going to use that technology to do that. So I think that flexibility angle is an important one for COVID.
I think the other thing is just learning how to keep your students' attention. The creativity that you can bring to the table to, right. I mean, we've seen that with many people that have right. found these different ways of, it's sort of like, I was in the television production in the sense, it's bringing that video production skills or a different mindset.
Right.
Because you want to keep their attention, and that's why they want to come to class, or why someone becomes a favorite professor for right. all of those things. Right. So that's very vital. Let's work in some
one other thing, if I could,
sure.
on this is pre-pandemic, if you talk to a lot of people looking for the future of higher education, they all would say, oh, we're going to go all online. We don't need these physical facilities. We don't need professors the same way. That's an old model. COVID reinforced the need and the value of being around each other and having that sense of community. And I think it reinforced that we do more at Washington State University than just transfer knowledge to a person when they come. There's actually a lot more efficient ways just to do that. But it's growth as a person, it's leadership, it's social skills, it's experiential learning. You put all that and bundle that with those technical skills or whatever that you're going to get, and that critical thinking. That to me is that package that's really important. So COVID did more to reinforce we need in-person experiences as part of education, I think, than almost anything else could have.
Yeah, and I think you probably heard it a lot. I know I did from students that just wanting to be able to come back to campus.
Oh, yeah.
And we heard it in the Board of Regents meetings when we
Yeah.
had students say, please, don't think about closing things down again.
Right. Yeah.
Because we want to be on campus. It's very important for us. Question here, one audience member wrote this. The learning experiences I had while traveling internationally are too numerous to count. One of my few regrets about my college years was not being able to study in another country. I can relate. What is WSU doing to encourage students to experience studying abroad? And is there a focus for students of color to take part? And what is we as alumni can do to help more students have this experience? I think it's a critical experience if you can get it.
Yeah. And that's a broad question. So
Yeah,
let
it
me
is.
try and
There's a lot of
get on
stuff
different
there.
things. So Asif Chowdhury serves as our vice president for international programs for the system, which means he's got responsibilities for, regardless of where your location is, to make sure that we are having some international experiences. COVID really set us back on that because, we didn't want people traveling within the state, much less going internationally. And so we're seeing a resurgence in interest coming back up on that. I would agree with the question. I had to work my way through school as an undergraduate. The idea of hopping on a plane and going internationally, I was hoping to, pay the bills and all those kind of things. And so for many of our students, they don't think of that international experience as attainable. But what happens is we have some great scholarship programs. We have some opportunities that are sponsored by industry, individual donors and things come in to provide scholarship support to enable those international experiences. International experiences too have a wide range. Some will be a week-long trip, maybe it's spring break or over Christmas break or right at the end of the semester. Sometimes people all think it's got to be in a semester bucket, and we have a lot of those semester ones. We have a lot of them that are these kind of shorter trips or summer length trips. So it turns out pre-COVID, my spouse and I were involved in an alumni trip, and we were in Spain. And so we wind up and we visit wineries and you get to know people and all that stuff. Well, we had a group of our Latinx students, first gen students, that also has a special program to get them, give them this international study opportunity where they actually go to Spain and take classes. So Noel and I got a chance at the end of that. We flew to see them, spent a whole day with our students there, and just had a chance to ask them, what has the experience been like? Many of them said, wow, the Spanish they speak at home and the Spanish here, it doesn't seem to be like
different.
Very, very different. So we're sitting around having pizza, just kind of chatting. And everyone to a person said, this is a transformational experience for me being outside the United States like this. And the second was, if I can find a way to do this again, I'm going to do it. Then to follow up on that, at the president's house, 2 months later, we had that same group of students all come back. And I said, what's it like now after you did the experience back on campus? You're still feeling good about it. And it was stunning, the number that said, I'm actively looking for financial ways that I can go and do another experience. And they all said, but I want to do something different. Not interested in going back doing the same thing. And people thought about, well, maybe something in Southeast Asia or a different area. So the number one way is they can always reach out to me directly, president@wsu.edu, and we would certainly put you in contact with the dean or a particular program. But we do have opportunities. We'd love to expand and have more.
We'll follow up to another question here is, what are the top 3 things WSU is doing to provide educational access to underserved populations?
Well, I think there was a time when you just sort of let the numbers float. You just, if we have our underserved populations go up a little bit, we'd wave the flag. But if you really dug deep, you'd say, I'm not sure you're really strategically doing much. So one of the things that we've tried to do is make sure that we've reduced the barrier, the sort of emotional barrier about even coming to a 4-year school, which means that we'll have programs where we'll bring in prospective students and their families that are done in Spanish. Our prospective undergraduate students are typically all very bilingual in those, but sometimes their parents or grandparents are not. And if it's a family decision about going somewhere to school, there needs to be, people got to feel comfortable with what that is. So we actually had a donor who provided a substantial gift to allow us to do more Spanish type of programming, to bring folks in and just get them onto campus in a way that maybe students from more privileged communities are used to being here for football games or other kind of things, so that they may not have that familiarity there. We're looking at building out our scholarship opportunities for all of our multicultural students. And so many families need help. And so we're trying to make sure that we go out and provide specific opportunities to provide those students that come from multicultural backgrounds additional financial support. The third thing is we've got a set of student groups on campus that are specifically focused on a great place to have some support, financial support, study support, emotional support. Go be with some people that maybe walked in your same shoes and things like that. And I think what we find is those are important things to help grow that population that reflects the state of Washington.
Right.
And sometimes people were like, oh, I can't believe you're doing all this work. What about all the other communities in the state? And to me, until our student population mirrors the state of Washington, we've got work to do. And that's where we're going.
Well, we are a land grant college.
Yes.
University, pardon me. And so we need to live up to that legacy. I also feel a lot of pride with the fact that I was able to contribute to the La Alianza, which did one of these. While they had a gala this past year, they also had an effort where they brought families onto campus, and I did a Spanish language welcome for them. But the other thing I think is that we have a board of regents, I think, that is much more reflective of the diversity that maybe never have had before. And I actually take a lot of pride in that, that we're very diverse with not only the ethnicity, but also the gender diversity that we have. So I think that that's important. And I hope that that's something that, we can continue to make sure that students and the parents out there in the community that are hoping their kids will have an opportunity to go to college see that.
I agree.
So that's got to be a priority. So that's a priority for me.
Yeah, and me as well, because I think we want a board of regents that, and for those who may not, board of regents, what is that?
Yeah, I get that all the
that's a
time.
Group of individuals, men and women. We also have a student regent and a new faculty regent that really are charged with the fiscal and financial aspects of how the university runs and functions, but also strategy, where we're going, hire, fire the president. I mean, they're really the ones that
we get to do that.
Yeah. hire presidents, hopefully not fire. But and I think that it's really important that board of regents have people from a diversity of backgrounds and walks in life in the state of Washington. I'm proud of where we are.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about, we began by talking about the great football win in Wisconsin, but there's been a lot of movements in the Pac-12 as to what it's going to be and realignments and what's going to happen. What can you tell us about where we're at with that?
Sure. And this is something where I'm spending a lot of time. Pat Chun, our athletic director, spending a lot of time. Elizabeth Chilton, our chancellor, also spending quite a bit of time. So at the end of the day, you say, Kirk, what's the ideal outcome? I think all three of those kind of key leaders felt the best outcome for WSU is a strong Pac-12. It's got great historical rivalries. It's really focused around the western part of the United States. And some of the other schools that elected to want to move to another conference, we thought, let's put our energies into making sure we can preserve what we have. The 10 remaining schools are really working very closely together. We're in the process of negotiations with our media partners, literally as we speak, on what that next deal is going to look like. And so I had lots of people tell me things like, oh, well, you're losing the LA school, so that means now we're going to see this big dip in revenues coming in. I can just say from some of the opening numbers that some of our media partners gave, we're not going to be seeing anything that looks like a drop in income. If anything, we're going to see substantial increases. So the playoff expanded as well. the football playoff, and people can go, well, wait, Kirk, I thought you were talking about the Pac-12. Well, it turns out I know a couple of the schools that maybe were on everybody's list that they were looking around have said in the last couple of weeks, well, the expanded playoff means now there's not a lot of advantage to looking elsewhere. So I think it's a combination of expanded playoff, the 10 schools really pledging to say, hey, let's do this thing together, and a new media rights deal that I think within maybe another 6 weeks, we expect to have a lot of this done. And I think the fan base then can relax a little bit. I can relax a little bit. Pat and Elizabeth can relax a little bit, but it's, I think I remind everybody that, and Enrique has spent a profession as a professional journalist. Just because somebody's got a web camera and a YouTube site does not mean that they necessarily have a lot of great information. And I'm stunned sometimes at the things that I read about.
It just means they have a lot of opinions.
Yes,
That's what it is.
I have lots of opinions too.
Yeah, too. It may not be based in fact, but
I think I just would like to tell, our fan base, don't believe everything you sort of read out there. And I go back just several months ago, by this time, the four corner schools were going to have left and gone to a different conference. It was imminent. And I'd sit with the presidents of those schools and go, I don't know what they're talking about. We're not talking to anybody. It was that kind of a thing. So our fan base, just be patient, let us do our work. And I think everybody's going to be really happy with the outcome.
Well, that's good to hear. I hope so. Question about how can those that are watching our virtual chat here, what can they do and how can they get involved to help WSU?
Well, we'll be putting out continued communications on times when we maybe need our alumni to come out in force or to do letter writing or different kind of things. And what you want to do is you want to use that great network of people we have out there when we really need it, and not sort of use it as a wasted resource where people go, well, we keep hearing you got to do all this stuff, what happened? So be patient. Stay in communication through the Alumni Association about what things are important. Follow us on the social media channels. We've got social media channels for WSU Advance and several of these other things. Pay attention to what's happening on those. And we're going to have a call to action on some things, and we're going to need our alumni out there to support us and do what they can to help in a coordinated fashion with legislative advocacy. So just keep your eyes on your mailbox. We got stuff coming, and we appreciate all the help anybody can give us.
Communities of color, how can they get involved to help in particularly those efforts of maybe reaching out to the community and getting young people and interested in WSU?
Well, and I think we need and I just spent some time with our Black alumni just a week or so ago, and a lot of our alumni and some of the communities of color have said, hey, we need to do more about encouraging people to apply, encouraging people to pursue higher education, and people that we know in our communities, in our areas, in our neighborhoods. So what I would ask everybody to do is, if somebody says, well, I'd love to go to WSU, but we don't have the financial resource to do that, you have to apply. If you apply, then we can work with you, and almost any family, we can find a way that'll work for them so that a Washington State University experience is there. I think also be a positive advocate for higher education in your communities. When somebody goes, well, you don't need a degree, look at me, I've done X, Y, and Z. It's not demeaning anybody, but say, hey, we want every generation to kind of be able to take a step that the previous one maybe wasn't able to do. And I think encourage that higher education, whether it's WSU or elsewhere. I think we just need to encourage people to pursue those same opportunities that maybe people in majority communities have.
I want to know, how do you personally feel about where we are, considering what we've gone through the last couple of years? Because, we went through not just COVID, but issue with the football coach and ups and downs. And how do you feel about where we're at now?
Yeah, I think I've aged 10 years in the last 2 years, but I'm a perpetually optimistic person, and I like where we are today. I like the energy, the leadership we have, both at the student the faculty, the graduate student level, staff level as well. So to me, I look at our future and I see a really bright future ahead of us. And I think WSU's been here a long time, had a great set of leaders over 132 years. And I think we just want to continue to make sure that we're listening to people, we're meeting the needs of the state of Washington, we're reaching out aggressively to communities across the state, whether our communities of color, our geographic areas and things like that, saying, hey, we're here to help and partner. We're not here to tell you what to do, but we're here to partner. And so I think the future is very, very bright. We had the best fundraising year in our history this last year.
Actually, I was going to ask you about that.
And some of the conversations I'm having now with people come through, we will break that record again this next year. So we've got people stepping up. They like what they see. They want to help students. They want to make a difference. And so I'm thumbs up, man. It's going to be a great ride.
Anything in particular you're hoping we will accomplish this year besides
going to the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I was going to say that actually.
Well,
trying to decide which bowl we want to go to.
I think making and helping our faculty, staff, and students across all of our locations feel comfortable with being back in person, and a little bit of, the thing that we have to all keep in mind is COVID isn't gone away. It's not going away. It's not going to just disappear where we just don't have to deal with it. So how do we get people to a place where they feel comfortable being together, they feel safe being together, and we start treating COVID as maybe an endemic problem and not the kind of thing that's a specialty problem. And I think we still got a ways to go on that, and that's going to be really important.
Yeah, but we as a university, I think from a research standpoint as well, we've done a lot in trying to help people.
I think
this
so.
time, so let's continue to do that. Well, thank you for the time for this conversation. Do it again sometime.
I'm happy to do it again.
All right.
So,
Okay.
sounds good. Thank you, Enrique.
Okay, and thank you all for joining us virtually for this conversation. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.